same day some Sadducees came to him, saying there is no resurrection. And they asked him a question. "Teacher, Moses said, if a man dies childless, his brother shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers among them. The first married and died childless, leaving the widow to his brother. The second did the same, so also the third, down to the 7th. Last of all, the woman herself died. In the resurrection then, whose wife of the 7 will she be? For all of them had married her." Jesus answered them, "You are wrong because you know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection people neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels of God in heaven. And as for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is God not of the dead, but of the living." And when the crowds heard it, they were astounded at his teaching.
I don't know about you, but I feel these questions are getting harder. In fact, this one feels more like a riddle than a question. The sort of question you have to read 3 times before it even begins to make sense. The sort of question you have to write down. The sort of question that would catch most people out. But surely we know by now Jesus is not most people. His question this time is from the Sadducees. We've come across them before in Matthew, but only very briefly, so let's remind ourselves what we know about them. The answer? Not a lot, actually. We do know that they were aristocracy, the wealthy, land-owning classes, conservative with a small c. In fact, theologian Tom Wright describes them as the "let's keep things the same as they are" party. As far as they were concerned, the only scriptures of any worth were the Torah or the Pentateuch, what we know as the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. To them, nothing else counted, which means if it wasn't written in there, well, it didn't count. And as far as they were concerned, resurrection wasn't written in there. So it too shouldn't count. Souls die with the physical body. Full stop. End of debate. Jewish people, on the other hand, were fascinated with life after death. They wanted to believe there was more. The Pharisees were certainly in that space, and Jesus, well, his teaching most definitely advocated for there being future life after death. So that's where the Sadducees focus in on, in an attempt to discredit him, to wrestle back the authority that his teaching has shown. And they do it by quoting Moses, and then coming up with a crazy fictional situation just to test him.
"Teacher, Moses said, if a man dies childless, his brother shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers among them. The first married and died childless, leaving the widow to his brother. The second did the same, so also the third, down to the 7th. Last of all, the woman herself died. In the resurrection then, whose wife of the 7 will she be? For all of them had married her."
Okay, that's not the easiest to get our heads around, so let's break it down. First of all, they quote the law of Moses from Deuteronomy 25. This law was part of a culture that said to die and not be able to carry on the family line was one of the most shameful things that could happen to you. Therefore, if you were a man and you died married, but without having had children, even though you were dead, your family would maintain the honour of the family through the marriage of your widow to the next oldest brother. Are you with me? Now for us, that sounds weird, but that's how it happened. Although if you think that's weird, the scenario painted by the Sadducees was even weirder. What if, they said, that happened to a woman 7 times, moving from one dead brother to the next until he died, and so on, all without there being any children? Far-fetched, but I suppose possible. And their argument was that if a woman is married successively to 7 brothers like this, it would be in keeping with Jewish law, But then in the resurrection or the afterlife, she'd have 7 husbands, which of course is both adulterous and unlawful. And therefore, all talk of resurrection is scuppered because it would lead to situations in the afterlife that were against Jewish law. I told you it was a crazy scenario. And Jesus' response, let's just say he's pretty direct. His first 3 words, "You are wrong," before he goes on to play and beat the Sadducees at their own game. His response is twofold. Firstly, you've misunderstood Scripture. Secondly, you've misunderstood the power of God. We're going to take these in the opposite order that you might expect. So we'll take the second one first. Jesus reminds them, the Sadducees, that resurrection or life after death is not about a correct theory or even theology, but about faith in the power of God. He points out to them that they're making a huge mistake in trying to judge the new age, the afterlife, based on their experience of this one. Faith in the resurrection is not a theory of human nature or a scientific explanation of what happens when we die, but it's trust in the power of God, who will, through that power, work an unimaginable transformation. Basically, don't judge life in eternity based on how you see life today. That's putting God in a human box, one that's kind of this size, when God is operating in one that's this size, or better still, one that is bigger than our human minds can even imagine, let alone understand. But Jesus isn't finished quite yet. You've misunderstood Scripture, he tells them. It's not just about knowing it, but interpreting what it's saying. Now, he could go to all sorts of Old Testament scriptures to make his point here, but he goes where? To Exodus. And why? Because he needed to quote from something from the Torah, those first 5 books. Otherwise, they wouldn't believe him. And the fact that in those first 5 books, he finds evidence of life beyond death, well, that's something they're just not ready for. His answer all revolves around Exodus 3, verse 6, God revealing his identity to Moses. It says this, he said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. In this incredible moment at the burning bush, God defines himself as the one who has willingly placed himself into covenant with people of past generations. These people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, well, they're now dead and buried, but not gone forever. God is somehow still Father, friend, Lord to them. The point is that this is not anything they've done or could make happen, but that their hope for life after death is all down to God's faithfulness and God's power. Make no mistake, says Jesus, this God is a God of the living. And in saying it, he gives them all the evidence they need about new life lying beyond the grave. It's an incredible encounter, and as I reflect on it, I find myself asking, what's really going on? What's the true motivation of the Sadducees? A challenge to Jesus' authority? A theological exploration of resurrection, of life after death? Or a desperate bid to hold back a revolution? It says afterwards that when the crowds heard it, they were astounded at his teaching. That last verse is another indication that revolution is coming. And there's nothing that the Sadducees or anyone else can do or say that will do anything about it.